There's no way we could have the 25th edition of the Santos Tour Down Under without a visit to Willunga Hill. And that's exactly what we had on the penultimate day of the race, the Saturday stage, in glorious sunshine and temperatures touching 30 degrees. Javier Romo signed on with just a 4-second lead over Jonathan Narvaez, who we've just seen signing on there. Could he hang on to it, and what would he have to do in the process? This was the course that laid out for them the first ever time the race has actually descended Willunga Hill first, heading back down into Willunga Township. 2 sprints there were for those 2 laps down on the McLaren Vale and through Snapper Point, with bonus seconds up for grabs. A day when so many riders would want to be in the breakaway and seeing if they could get up the road maybe one last time before this race comes to a conclusion in the city centre criterium in Adelaide. That was the route set out for them, and I must admit, the battle for the breakaway today and then what happened within it was almost as good as the finale. It was absolutely fascinating. A real fight to get in there. Multiple riders rolling forward, Lewis Askey amongst them. The Australian national team also really keen to be up the road, but we were in the end served up with this. Michael Hepburn of Jayco Alula, Pascal Enkhorn of Soudal-QuickStep, Ben Swift of Ineos Grenadiers, Oliver Bledin of the Australian national team, and they were then joined by Juan Pedro Lopez of Lidl-Trek and Pablo Torres. The problem is, Pablo Torres here was only, 35 seconds down on general classification. The others in there were not happy. We got to the first climb. Juan Pedro Lopez set off by himself, and unfortunately for all of them, I think, in a way, Pablo Torres went with him. So trying to get rid of the guy who was so highly placed on GC wasn't working. They came to the top of Wickham Hill, the first category climb. Pablo Torres was obviously not happy about... Juan Pedro Lopez was not happy about Pablo Torres being there, and while those two were looking at each other, the other 4 came past and gave them the big old flyby. They came flying past them. Anyway, behind, as we descended Willunga Hill for the first ever time in this race, a crash which took out Sam Welsford, winner of stages 1 and 2. He would have been hoping just to get through this stage and survive down onto the streets of Adelaide for tomorrow's criterium. We'll see if that affects him tomorrow. The chasing was being done by the Dutch team, Team Picnic Post NL, thinking of course about Oscar Onley, who had won this stage 1 year ago. Out front, the 4 who had managed to get rid of Juan Pedro Lopez pressed on. Behind, Juan Pedro Lopez was still desperately trying to get across. Onto Willunga Hill for the first time, and they were all being caught. It was Jayco Alula who were trying everything they could to shred down the leading group. Chris Harper once again looking so strong and actually going off by himself the first time up. King of the Mountains at the top, of course, and Harper looking so good. Ineos Grenadiers at this point started to throw everything at it. Michal Kwiatkowski doing exactly that, but the rider who managed to get across to Harper was his own teammate, the Swiss national champion Mauro Schmidt, still looking so strong, having been away in the breakaway all day yesterday by himself. Well, they were to be caught eventually, and it was actually a big push from Ineos Grenadiers, who had separated themselves and others into a leading group as we went on to Willunga Hill the final time. The race leader himself choosing the best form of defence was to attack. They were not expecting this. We were not expecting this. Javier Romo going clear on the final climb, but it was just too much. Luke Plapp closed the gap, or was closing the gap, and he took with him Jonathan Narvaez, overlapping. They caught the race leader Javier Romo. You might think they would then go straight past him, but Romeo had a second wind. Romo, I should say, of course, not Romeo. But look at this. Jonathan Narvaez going for the drops. Everyone knowing he was the danger man. Oscar Onley, last year's winner, here on top of the hill doing his best. But once Narvaez had opened the afterburners round the final corner, he was absolutely unstoppable. The Ecuadorian road race champion, head down on the drops, driving for the line, and he took the win. With it, of course, the 10-second bonus. And look at Javier Romo. What a ride by him to finish where he did. He'd lost the jersey because of the bonus seconds on the line, of course. Jonathan Narvaez taking 10. But what a ride by Javier Romo. And there was the top 10. Narvaez the winner, ahead of Onley, last year's winner. Finn Fisher-Black with a brilliant late drive to the line, just ahead of Luke Plapp. What a finale. What a stage. The Queen stage, undoubtedly. We wondered whether maybe the Notts Hill stage on stage 3 was the Queen stage, but there's no doubt about it. Everything happened once again on Willunga Hill. The man who'd finished second on it and second in the race last year, Jonathan Narvaez, this time round the victor. He takes over the race lead and he will have to bring that home over the 90 kilometres, 20 laps on the streets of Adelaide tomorrow. Whatever you do, make sure you join me, Jez Cox, and Adam Blythe tomorrow for the final stage of the Santos Tour Down Under in its 25th edition. Don't miss it.